Salt Lake City Council meeting this evening. Normally, James Rogers would be conducting the meeting for this month. He's not able to be with us this evening, so I have the pleasure and the honor. First on our agenda, if you would please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. This evening we have a series of public hearings on our agenda, and I know that some individuals are here to speak to our public hearings, and some are also here to speak to our public comments section. We host our hearings first, and then we'll get to the public comments section, so we appreciate your patience if you're here for later on the agenda. I would like to just start by reminding that people who are here that we are really happy to see you here. We appreciate your time and comments to the council. We value your comments quite a bit, actually. We do have a few guidelines around commenting. You will be allowed 2 minutes to speak this evening. And we will have a timer, so we'll let you know when that 2 minutes is up. We need to be really considerate of keeping people to that 2-minute limit because we have a lot of people who would like to speak tonight, and we want to ensure that everybody has that opportunity to share their thoughts with us. We ask you to follow a few guidelines of being civil to each other. We ask that you not clap or applaud for or against comments, no jeering as well. We work really hard to ensure that people are comfortable when they come and take this opportunity to speak to us, and we want to ensure that everybody is heard. Also, some very common sense guidelines. Please no standing on the furniture or disrespecting anything in this very historic room in this historic building. The council is on to item 4 in the agenda, which is approving the work session minutes of Tuesday, September 5th, 2017, Tuesday, September 12th, 2017, and Tuesday, September 19th of 2017, as well as the formal minutes of October 3rd, 2017.
Mr. Chair, so moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you very much. Our first public hearing is an ordinance concerning 21st and 21st Small Area Plan. If you are here to speak specifically to this public hearing, we ask you, I should say we ask everyone to fill out a card so we know how to call you up. These happen to be red cards. If you are here to speak to this hearing and you have not filled out a red card, please do so. And if you'll raise your hand, staff members, we have staff members on either side of the building who can collect those cards or can get you a card. I will call first name and then, if you will, a batter up who should be prepared to come up and speak second. So our first comments will be from Soren Simonson, and our second is George Chapman.
I wasn't expecting to be first up on deck, but here we go. Thank you, members of the council, for both funding and allowing the community to help develop this master plan. As you know, I live about 3 doors from the 21st and 21st Business District, so I have great interest in what's going on there. There are some really fantastic elements of this plan. It's reflected, I think, some very strong desires from the community. There's also some things that I would love to see addressed. One of those is, I know you're going to be reviewing a little bit later this evening, or you are reviewing and have a public hearing on the housing plan. And I don't think that this master plan as it is right now captures the full intent of that housing plan. As you know, the site, one of the primary sites in this business district is contaminated. and it's affecting our drinking water. It's certainly a concern for me because I'm in the path of the plume and am concerned long-term about the safety and the health of the community. And remediating that without any redevelopment or other tools is going to require a market force that's not going to be realized with the contents of the plan, being a very moderate density and modest height development. I understand there are trade-offs, and to accept that density means that there will be changes in the community. But we have over 1,000 kids growing up in this neighborhood right now that need housing. We also have aging residents that eventually will move out of their single-family homes. And the few new condos that have been developed in the neighborhood have been consumed very quickly with demand mostly coming from the neighborhood. And so I would love to see expanded housing opportunities in this business district plan. And that's a compromise that will probably require some additional height, modest height, certainly within the scale of the neighborhood, but maybe another story or two would allow us to implement the master plan and move forward. It's difficult to balance desires, and I know that there's been a lot of controversy about the bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. That's an essential part of the plan. I hope that remains, and I hope that you're able to take this plan, maybe tweak it a little bit and move forward.
Thank you, Soren. We'll just take this opportunity to remind people that 2 minutes goes by really fast, and we're all very aware of that. There are other opportunities to share your thoughts with the council, and we do receive and review letters, communication through letters, email, Open City Hall, and also phone calls to the council office. So those opportunities are valued by us as well. And I haven't started your time yet, George, or at least I don't think we have. George Chapman, followed by L. Rex Sears.
I'm a little concerned that the 21 small area plan is not really a real plan. It's just like, let's do this, but I'm also concerned, Charlie, you mentioned the roundabout. You need to know that this is an area where school kids cross regularly. This is a really dangerous intersection for kids. 21st and 21st is really bad. And this plan could increase density to the point we're making it worse. So I hope when you are implementing this, you consider the safety of those school children. It is really bad. Roundabout won't work. 4 lanes on a roundabout are really, really dangerous for pedestrians. I don't have a solution. 21st and 21st, there's no solution to get kids across safely. It's almost like one of those, only a bridge will work, but that's too much and it doesn't make sense either. So this is the problem. You're increasing density in an area, at the same time you're decreasing safety for kids. I want you to consider this as you go forward. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, George. L. Rex Sears, followed by Oliver Ayatokovici. I'm sorry, Oliver, but you can correct that when you come up.
Good evening. My name is Rex Sears. I've lived in my home less than a block west of 21st and 21st for 18 years. To begin, I do want to thank John Anderson and the rest of the staff for their careful attention and hard work on this. I do have one major concern, and that is with the plan's friendliness to third stories and to zoning changes required for third stories. So I find on page 8 of the plan a statement that 2 to 3 story buildings are appropriate, and I find on page 17 that the height of a building's first floor is critical, and a minimum ground floor height may make it difficult for 3-story structures to be built within the current allowed building height limit. But I also find at page 19 that when there was an open house held to solicit community input, there was a strong preference for 1 to 2 story development. So there's a disconnect between the community input the plan is supposed to be based on and what the plan actually contains. To drive that home, this small area plan was prompted by a specific development proposal that was floated a few years ago. Neighbors rallied against that proposal and organized a petition drive that yielded 876 signatures on 76 pages of petition. I have a scan of that I'll email to John after I sit down. The petition text includes this: by signing below, we are making known our strong opposition to any zoning change for that area. And it includes this: allowing anything higher than the currently permitted 30 feet would be a detriment to our neighborhood, which is made up mostly of single-family homes. Now, at page 18, the plan mentions what I think is the driver for this, a citywide goal of supporting local businesses and neighborhood business districts. That may be a citywide goal. It is not most of the residents' goal, or at least not our primary goal. Our primary goal is to contain and stop the upzoning creep. So before adoption, this plan should be revised to eliminate the pro three-story elements and to make abundantly clear that any conflict between preservation of the predominantly single-family residential character of the surrounding streets on the one hand and supporting local businesses on the other should be resolved in favor of preservation and existing zoning. Thank you.
Thank you, Rex. Oliver, and Oliver's going to help me pronounce his last. He's not going to help me. He's actually going to pronounce his last name, and then followed by Kyle Honeycutt.
Thank you. It's pronounced Yotskovich.
Thank you.
Good evening, council members. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today addressing the 21st and 21st development. I am a resident, actually neighbors with the previous speaker, Rex Sears, and I live on 21st South and about 20th East. I observe oftentimes very high commute traffic on the road, and there was a resurfacing project earlier this July which considered many public forum considerations whether to restripe the area on 21st South between 17th East and 21st South. It was decided to maintain the same striping, which is 4 lanes, 2 in each direction. I notice here on the plan on page 13 that there is discussion about increasing accessibility of bike lanes, where that possibility has been precluded on the 21st South, maintaining its existing striping. I feel that there is an inherent danger to bicyclists, forcing them to use other means, which also seems to reduce the amount of traffic that could easily flow on 21st South, being a main thoroughfare. Applying this logic to 21st East, there are considerably less traffic impacts adding bicyclists to this location, but overall, they would be forced to use sidewalks, where a previous comment made with school children and pedestrian traffic makes that a considerable danger to everyone using those same sidewalks. So I'd like that to be considered here, because there is a heck of a lot of traffic going on 21st South, and bicyclists don't really have a good place to go, and children at the same time have to share those bikeways. So please consider that in this development proposal.
Thank you, Oliver. Kyle Honeycutt, followed by Mark Morris. Just a staff member to the side there. We'll take that for you. She'll take those as well. Thank you.
If the zoning stays the same, we're looking at 30 feet as was previously mentioned. If you look at that poster there, if someone could hold it up. You've got the bottom version, which is the 3-story red brick building, 8-foot high ceilings. And then you have the top version, which takes into account a lot of the form-based code elements in this area plan. Now, in order to make, and let me pause here, I represent the owner of the property, and so the drawing on top is what the owner of the property has prepared as a possible rendition of what it might look like. Either option, the bottom option is an option for the developer that meets the current zone. The top option is an option if form-based code is employed, where we set back the buildings away from the sidewalk to have more room for people to walk, where we set back the 2nd and 3rd story as called for in the small area master plan. We take advantage of the features that are mentioned in the small area master plan, and we keep generally the same square footage. We take it away from the street, make more room on the street, and take that square footage that we took away and we put it in a non-obtrusive, heavy massing fashion on top. So even if you end up with the same square footage, you could end up with a building that looks much nicer, that incorporates the elements of the form-based code called for in the plan. If we follow the plan, exactly where it says 3 stories is as high as it will go, then we'll end up with something more compact, like the bottom picture, which is the existing
Time.
zone.
Thank you, Kyle.
Thank you for your time.
Mark Morris, followed by Dave Iltis. And Dave's the last card I have, so if you're here to speak on the 21st plan, if you could raise your hand and fill out a red card.
Good evening. My name is Mark Morris. I've lived in this neighborhood for over 30 years, and I'm vehemently opposed to making it bigger and more commercial and higher than it already is. I look at what's happened down on 11th East and between 11th and 13th East, and all those structures going up. That might be great for businesses and great for housing that goes up 5 or 6, 7 stories tall. But as we've heard earlier, the people that live here do not want high buildings and dense business development here. There's a certain symmetry if you look at 9th and 9th, if you look at 15th and 15th. Those are lovely, neighbor-friendly, pedestrian-friendly business districts that seem to be thriving and doing well. And moving another 6 blocks east and south to 21st and 21st from 15th and 15th ought to have the same idea. And why anything would trump what the people in this neighborhood who live there, who have bought homes there and lived there for a long time, why anything would trump their desires to have a nice, friendly neighborhood feel instead of going high and dense is beyond me. I urge you to strongly consider the needs and desires of the people that live there, and if people want density and high and thick and busy, there are plenty of other places in this city to go. But please try to preserve something that hasn't gone too far yet. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mark. Dave Iltis, and Dave is my last card.
Hi, my name's Dave Iltis. In reading through the plan, I find it sadly ironic that the plan says bike lanes showed strong support, and you want to redevelop 21st and 21st to be a more pedestrian-friendly and more bike-friendly area and support the local businesses. Yet our mayor removed the bike lanes, removed the possibility of doing that, which, well, we just had an accident on 1961 South and 2100 East where a teenager was hit in an unmarked crosswalk and broke both his legs. And that's a direct consequence of an unsafe 21st South. It's a direct consequence of not having crosswalks. It's a direct consequence of not having a road diet. It's a direct consequence of not having bike lanes. It's a direct consequence of not having lower speed limits on that area. If you want to support 21st and 21st, then you really have to support it. And passing a plan that is a half measure is not a good idea. You need to make 21st South a people-friendly street. It's not. And the mayor's decision to overrule every plan that's out there to appease a few people in the neighborhood at the expense of, safety is just not a good thing. So I'm asking that you put stronger language in there, about restoring a road diet and traffic calming on that street because it's safer, it's calmer, and it's better.
Thank you, Dave. That's my last card on this topic. I would consider a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move that the council close the public hearing and defer action to a future council meeting.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Luke and a second by Councilmember Kitchen. Any discussion to the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Our second public hearing is concerning an ordinance for the West Side Master Plan implementation. And it looks like it's a green card. For this one, I have one card. If you are here to speak to the West Side Master Plan implementation, please raise your hand and have a staff member bring you a card. Jared Parkinson.
Hello, Council. Thank you for having me. I live at 952 West, 900 South. I have several properties in this neighborhood, and I am in favor of this zoning ordinance change. I believe it is wholly consistent with the master plan, and our neighborhood needs some more business. We need a walking neighborhood. We need a place that people have a destiny to go to. We already have the amenities. People just really don't know about it. We have the International Peace Gardens, the Nine Line Trail, the Jordan Parkway, and frankly, I hesitate to tell people what an absolute jewel this neighborhood is. However, we don't have the business and we don't have the density that we need. A lot of the homes are residential, but they are in disrepair, and we just don't have the economic stimulus to this neighborhood yet. I fully support this ordinance change and rezone, and I ask the council to support it as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Are there others here who wish to speak to the 800 and 900 South, 900 West node rezoning?
Mr. Chair.
I recognize Kyle Amalfa, who needs to fill out a card.
Thank you. I do. I'll fill out a
Welcome,
card.
former council member.
I know the routine. Just speaking generally to the all the West Side changes that are on the agenda tonight, it's so exciting to see this come to life and to see our actions that we were foreseeing several years ago come to fruition. We have a plan, we have money, and we appear to have support from a city council that is enthusiastic about positive change on the West Side. So I encourage you to put your full support behind the actions and the change that is coming on the West Side. It is a wonderful place to live, and I'm sure you all believe that your district is the best place to live. But the fondness for District 2 and Glendale and Poplar Grove it will be enhanced by this plan. Let me say that for the least. Since I have the floor, though, I would like to mention two other things. One is that you are currently returning impact fees. You're sending checks back for impact fees. I got my check this week for impact fees for a building that was built in 2001. So it took 16 years to pay back the impact fees that went unused. Man, guys, get on it. Spend the money. You got it. You have the money. Spend the money. There's wonderful trail projects that can be used. Impact fees can be used right by where the building was built. And I'm speaking specifically of the Folsom corridor. Don't hesitate. Spend the money. I have one other issue I want to bring up. And mostly, that's kind of an administrative issue, Ms. Mayor. And another issue that also is an administrative issue, and this should concern our Chief of Staff, Patrick, too, is that the $150,000 that we set aside for the Arts Accessibility Program at the theater, we set aside before the theater opened. And we have also been, I'll be just a moment, we've also been collecting those fees, and now we're in our second year of production. They have not been put to use. There's no program.
Okay, so
The city
Councilmember
council
Waffle,
did a great thing.
I totally appreciate your passion on this, and you know the situation I'm in right now because I have to call time on you. So please share your thoughts with the council, and we sure appreciate you
Mr.
being
Chief
here.
of Staff, you're on the board. Put it to work.
Thank you, and don't forget to fill out a green card. So, because we want to know who you are. Any other comments to this rezoning? I would entertain a motion, please.
Mr. Chair, I move the council close the public hearing and defer action to a future council meeting.
Second.
There's a motion by Councilmember Johnston and a second by Councilmember Adams to close the hearing. Any discussion?
Is there any reason why we wouldn't adopt this tonight?
It's not our practice to adopt the same night as the hearing, but I can't speak to it other than it's not typically our practice.
I would support adoption this evening.
You would need to make a substitute motion if that is something you'd like to pursue.
I'd like to make a substitute motion that we adopt this ordinance change this evening.
So as a clarification, a substitute motion to close the public hearing and adopt.
Excuse me, close the public hearing, suspend the rules, and adopt.
And is that sufficient? And so we have a substitute motion on the floor to suspend the rules, close the hearing, and adopt the ordinance this evening. Any discussion to that substitute motion?
I endorse it.
Okay, then we'll vote on the substitute motion, which is to adopt this evening. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The substitute motion carries. Thank you very much. Our next hearing is an ordinance concerning 2200 West zoning map amendments and associated zoning text amendments. Looks like we have a few cards for this one. It's a blue card. I have one card, so if you're here to speak to item number 3 on our agenda, an ordinance for 2200 West zoning map amendment and associated zoning text amendment, please raise your hand. Dave Iltis.
So the area of 2200 West between 2nd North and about 22nd North has been in the past great habitat for wildlife. That particular spot that between 2200 West and I-215 has had in the past wetlands. There have been wetlands that have been filled in with no one minding the ship. No one's paying any attention to those wetlands, and my guess is, in some sense, they're probably being filled in illegally. You're not supposed to fill in wetlands. You're supposed to maintain or mitigate or whatever, and all I've seen, over the last 15 or 20 years in that area is continued development. It's an industrial park, and what have been, marshes with cattails are now filled in with lots of landfill. And I think you need to, as a council, look at this and pay attention to this issue. I think I brought this up a year or so ago. I don't think anything's been done. I don't think anyone's paid any attention to that. And secondly, in this area, in regards to the bike lanes on 22nd West, it would be great if those were buffered, since more zoning changes will bring more traffic and lower the speed limit on that road, so it's better and safer biking, and we preserve that for the long term. So thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other comments to this zoning map amendment and text change? Be looking for a motion, council members?
Mr. Chair, I move the council close the public hearing and defer action to a future council meeting.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Johnston and a second by Councilmember Mendenhall to close the hearing and defer action. Any discussion to the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Our fourth item, public hearing, is an ordinance for the rezoning of 1144 West, 500 South, and 1111 West Arapahoe. Do we have any cards on this? We do not have any cards for people who want to comment on this issue. Are there any here to comment on this rezoning? Council members?
Mr. Chair, I move the council close this public hearing and defer action to a future council meeting.
I have a motion by Councilmember Mendenhall and a second by Councilmember Luke. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Our next public hearing is an ordinance concerning the Regent Street Signage Overlay District. Are there any people here to speak to the exciting topic of the Regent Street Signage Overlay District? Does not appear so.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I move that the council close the public hearing and defer action to a future council meeting.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Luke and a second by Councilmember Mendenhall to close the hearing and defer action. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Item number 6 in the public hearing is an ordinance concerning the Station Center area zoning map amendments. Looks like I have a couple of cards from people on this topic, or one. George Chapman. If there are others here who would wish to speak to the Station Center area zoning map amendment, please raise your hand and fill out an orange card. Welcome, George.
let's see if you say welcome after this. You already know what I'm going to say. You're pushing on the Station Center redevelopment really, really fast, and you haven't really taken care of the homeless issue. This is the homeless area. Station Center is the homeless area. You're pushing for development, and what you're going to do is kick out all the homeless without solving the problem. So all the homeless, let's face it, they're going to go to your area, our area, and they're not going to be able to find the help that they should be getting. Instead of putting money into redevelopment before you solve the problem first before you go into redevelopment. These are people that are going to be populating the sidewalks. These are people who do not want to have ID cards. They don't want to have any help. They want to be left alone, and they're going to populate the sidewalks in front of your redevelopment area, Station Center. It doesn't make sense. So I'm asking you to slow down and steer some of the funding towards solving the problem with the homeless, to get them off the sidewalk, to put them in an indoor facility where they can develop a relationship with a social worker. It might take a year, but that's the only way you're going to get them off the sidewalk. If you don't have a place for them to have a relationship with someone who can steer them into a better direction, you're not going to solve this problem, and homeless are going to be on the sidewalks, camping, doing all sorts of things, and it's an issue. So please consider the homeless when you're working on this. Don't redevelop the area until you solve the homeless problem.
Thank you, George. And to be clear, George, you're always welcome here. Any other comments?
Mr. Chair, I move the council close the public hearing and defer action to a future council meeting.
I have a motion by Councilmember Kitchen and a second by Councilmember Luke to close the hearing and defer action. Any discussion to that motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Our next public hearing is concerning an ordinance concerning the Salt Lake City Housing Plan. And I know we have a few cards on this one. If you are here to speak to the Salt Lake City Housing Plan and you haven't yet filled out a lime green card, please take a moment to do that. My first speaker is from Douglas Cotant, followed by Soren Simonson.
Hello, Lisa. I guess when I filled out the card on this, I wasn't sure what I was doing, but does this Salt Lake City Housing Plan include low-income housing? And exactly how does this housing plan work?
So Douglas, we can't, that's about a 2-hour conversation that we'd be happy to have with a staff member if you'd like some follow-up.
As a matter of fact, we'll take 6 hours.
Any other comments, Douglas, to the plan?
Not on the plan, no.
Great.
Right.
I will have a staff member contact you with to help you with your questions.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you, Douglas. Soren Simonson, followed by Sean McMillan.
Thank you for the opportunity to comment on the housing plan. I think this is a fantastic document. I hope you adopt it very soon. I want to call your attention to 3 items that I would hope to see emphasized and included in the adoption. First of all, inclusionary zoning. It's been needed for decades in Salt Lake City. 21st and 21st Business District would be a fantastic location. We desperately need affordable housing in Sugar House and in my neighborhood. Accessory units, I know you're working on that. They're a really great way to expand affordable housing and other housing options without changing the character of neighborhoods. I hope we can move forward on that very quickly. And the third is get properties that the city owns into the hands of developers as quickly as possible. The council has made enormous strides in creating this $20+ million housing fund. Put it to work. The city is the largest owner of developable property in Salt Lake City that's sitting vacant and idle. Put it to work. Rather than putting out 1 or 2 RFPs a year and have a dozen developers competing for the same project, get all 12 of those developers. We have a perfect storm of opportunity right now. The market is hot. You've created the financing tools. Get your properties in the hands of developers. So all 12 of those developers are working at the same time and making a big dent in developing affordable housing. We've got to quit metering it out so slowly. Get it in the hands of developers. Put them to work. They want to work. They want to do projects. They want to work with Salt Lake City as a partner. Make them your partner and put them to work. That's all. Thank you. Good luck, and adopt this plan soon. Make it happen.
Thank you, Soren. Sean McMillan, followed by Jake Williams. And Jake Williams is my last card on this topic, so if you'd like to speak to it, please raise your hand and fill out a card.
Hello, my name is Sean McMillan. I'm the Executive Director of First Step House. I want to thank the council for giving me the time. I want to speak to the housing plan. Many of you know that the work of First Step House centers on assisting those overcoming the effects of substance use disorder and mental health conditions. Many of those we serve, because of their health condition and lack of access to services, have ended up with numerous hurdles to housing and stability in the community. The Growing Salt Lake City, a 5-year housing plan, addresses through broad language the hurdles that those that we serve face. The Growing Salt Lake City, a 5-year housing plan, addresses equity, diverse neighborhoods, and discrete and institutional discrimination for people with disabilities, including those individuals with substance use disorder and mental health conditions. It is essential that this plan maintain a focus on affordable housing, particularly deeply affordable housing for those 40% of the AMI and below. Diverse, innovative, and novel opportunities for capital and financing should be prioritized and encouraged to really impact the affordable housing stock. Additionally, individuals at and below 40% of the AMI have needs, mental health and otherwise, that need to be addressed often for long periods of time to sustain stable housing. These resources must be cultivated for these supportive services, or we risk another revolving door of eviction and institutionalization. I feel that the Growing Salt Lake City 5-year plan implicitly seeks to address these issues. I would ask that the Salt Lake City Council adopt the plan while being mindful that housing only is just a part of the solution. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jake Williams. And Jake is my last card on this topic.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to come before you. I represent a boutique design, build, development firm focused on missing middle infill development in Salt Lake. We're just a new firm. We've been around for about a year, and I just wanted to speak in support of this plan and thank those who have put time into it. I think it enables creative development response to the neighborhoods without necessarily impacting negatively those neighborhoods. I think specifically we have a couple projects that we're working on the Central 9th District that are in the form-based code over in that area, and it's enabled us to be creative and to bring new product, new for-sale townhome product to the city, and really fill a need that I think in many cases goes unmet because we don't have some of the row houses and townhomes. Cottage development has not been something that we've had in the past, and I think this plan speaks well to that, and so we'd like to just speak in support of the housing plan and of the adoption thereof, and then just focus on continuing to push the missing middle as an opportunity for infill redevelopment. Thank you.
Thank you, Jake. I don't have any, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I don't have any additional cards on this topic. Are there others who wish to speak? Then, council members, I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move that the council close the public hearing and note that a second public hearing on the housing plan is scheduled for November 21st.
There's a motion by Council Member Adams and a second by Council Member Mendenhall to close the hearing and, to close the hearing. Any discussion to that motion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? That motion carries. And as Council Member Adams mentioned, we will have another hearing on this same topic on the 21st of November. We are now on to our final public hearing, which is an ordinance to temporarily close a portion of Rio Grande Street. It looks like I have several pink cards. So if you're here and wish to speak to this issue of the temporary closure of a portion of Rio Grande Street, please make sure you fill out a card. Douglas Cotant, followed by George Chapman.
Yeah, I just was studying this a little bit just now. If this is the area where all the trouble has been going on, I think instead of closing that particular area, I would have a very heavy police presence so that, and I would have, and as far as the police presence, I would have them watching everything just to make sure something happens or nothing happens. So I probably would not close this portion. As I say, I would assign a very heavy police presence to this area to make sure nothing happens. Thank you.
Thank you, Douglas. George Chapman, followed by Bernard Hart. And Robin, we have a couple people who might want to speak to this issue.
Okay. Again, you haven't solved the homeless problem by giving Rio Grande to the state. This is ridiculous because, again, Patrick, you admitted that the whole idea is to get the criminal element out of the Rio Grande area. But if the criminal element is outside of the fenced-in area, that means everybody else in the city is going to have exposure to criminal element. So instead of locking them up, they're going into the rest of the community. So essentially, you're not solving the problem, you're just dispersing it and hoping that it works out, but it doesn't make sense. I don't think this plan makes sense. I know you were bullied into it by Greg Hughes. It wasn't your fault. The mayor, you're not responsible for this either. It's Greg Hughes and Ben McAdams. So they didn't expand health care, they didn't provide enough jail space, so that's the issue. I also need to point out that you still haven't solved the hepatitis A outbreak. It's serious, you have porta potties out there and you don't have hand washing stations. And you can't use regular alcohol hand sanitizer because hepatitis A will go through it. It doesn't kill hepatitis A. This is a serious issue you should be addressing before you close that street, and you still have porta potties out there. Bottom line, you haven't solved the problem by closing the street. This does not solve the problem.
Thank you, George. Bernard Hart.
The methods a city or an area uses to solve a problem usually reflect their ability to deal with the problem. And if you have to resort to fencing and policing to solve a homeless problem and a mental health problem, because that's really what it is a mental health problem, and you need armed policemen arresting the mentally ill, and you need fencing in a Salt Lake City, this LDS center of the world where it's supposed to be peaceful and people are supposed to get along, and you need fencing to separate the mentally ill from the rest of the community, because that's what you're doing. The fencing is separating the mentally ill and the homeless from the gateway. And when I'm down on the Rio Grande in the morning, I was down there this morning with 15 homeless individuals on the street. One of them, whose name was Uncle Mother, and I won't say the last word, and Bad Smoke and Smash, and they're all out on the street working with me together for a half hour, 45 minutes, and they're interacting together and being civil to each other. And I look in the fence area and I see 8 state troopers standing around with their hands in their pockets while we're out in the street accomplishing something good. And I see the fence, and I see the people hating the fence and not wanting the fence there. The fence and I've been warned not to say the word stormtroopers, but at the rate they're arresting the mentally ill and the people that are disadvantaged in the city, I can't think of them personally in any other way. It reflects the city's ability to deal with this issue, and it's not right. Thank you.
Thank you, Bernie. William Galloway, and William Galloway is the last card I have on this issue.
So when it comes to mental health issues, the only thing that's effective is more funding towards asylums, towards places in which you oversight these places, of course, but you watch and make sure that they're getting the medications they need social health programs, and just moving it over to another part or closing down a district doesn't solve anything. You've just shut down the road, you've just shut down development, you've shut down people actually getting it solved. It just delays the inevitable of where you actually have to address the issue. You never have to address the issue if you just hide from it. And it ends up being a bigger problem. It grows. More and more people will become affected if they don't get medications, if they're mentally ill. They will start to lash out if they don't have those medications. So instead of ignoring the problem, closing down the street, why don't you, instead of putting cops out there, just have people come out there to talk with them, to help guide them to the best situation possible? Because officers will send people running, will send people to be afraid. Why aren't the council actually going down there to talk to those individuals to see what works best for them instead of ignoring the problem and closing it down? It's easy to do, just close down the roads, to close down the area. It's hard to actually stand there next to someone who has not had a home for a long time and shake their hand and talk to them and look them in the eye and say, I'm here to help you. But also, why aren't we developing houses for these individuals so that way they can get cleaned up, they can get accustomed to the transition into society, because that's the most difficult part about being homeless, is transitioning back into society. And when you ostracize them like this, it does not help them, it makes it worse.
Thank you, William. I don't have any other cards on this particular public hearing. Council members that entertain a motion, I think we should probably do this in the two motions as outlined.
Mr. Chair, I move that the council close the public hearing.
I have a motion by Councilmember Luke and a second by Councilmember Adams to close the public hearing. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I move that the council adopt an ordinance to temporarily close a portion of Rio Grande Street between about 200 South and 235 South Rio Grande Street.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Luke and a second by Councilmember Kitchen to adopt the ordinance. Any discussion? Council members, if I may, I just would like to comment. I think one of the great challenges of this process has been the challenge of the process. And I would be remiss if I did not, I think, share some of William's concerns that regardless of the intent, as we continue to enforce in this neighborhood, we continue to send the message that the homeless population is not safe here. And I know that there's a conflict between our goal of providing safety and the perception of safety. I think we could do a lot more. I know that you are all very concerned about this. I'm not chastising the council in any way, but I am increasingly concerned that we are not adequately addressing the long-term needs of the population in this neighborhood. So I just felt like I needed to share that in this moment. I'm going to support the ordinance, but there's so much work to do, and I'm increasingly concerned that these little steps are taking so much focus that we're losing sight of the need for mental health, substance use treatment, and diversion programs that clearly the state has yet to step up and fund. Councilmember Mendenhall.
Thank you for your words, Mr. Chair. I agree with you. And I also want to say that this is one piece of a pretty broad plan that is, this is not the solution to a problem. It's a piece of a puzzle, really. But I also want to say that I feel as we go down the path towards a more permanent road closure here, I don't feel that the city is using the state's desire for this closure to leverage assurance that we will achieve the successes that we're being assured we are. And we are relying on hope too much at this point. This is a serious request that we could say no to, ultimately, and that I would like to have more assurance from the state and our other partners that these successes will come to fruition than we currently have as we go down what is a multi-step path on this issue.
Any other comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. That concludes our public hearing portion of our agenda. We have a couple of potential action items. The first, so we are on agenda item C1. We have an ordinance concerning the Northwest Quadrant Overlay and M1 text amendment.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Chair?
I move that the council adopt an ordinance amending various sections of Title 21A of the Salt Lake City Code and zoning map pertaining to the development of Salt Lake City's Northwest Quadrant. And I further move the properties owned by the airport be excluded from the natural areas and lowland conservancy overlays, and remove large area wind systems from the table of uses in the Northwest Quadrant overlay area.
Do I have a second to that motion?
I'll second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Luke and a second by Councilmember Johnston. Any discussion to the motion? Yes, Aaron, then Lisa. Lisa, then Aaron.
I would like to see us shelf this for a little bit, to have a little more discussion, because we changed things from the time when we had a lot of input, and I'd like to have the opportunity to have additional input from particularly the people who are concerned about the wetlands there. And I think we need to have a little more conversation, because I think people were surprised by the changes we made, and that we really haven't had a vigorous public process on discussing those changes. So I'd like to see us hold off on adopting until we can have additional conversation.
Councilmember Mendenhall.
I agree, and if we vote no on this right now, we kill it. So I would ask that our motion and second retract their motion.
Do you want to propose a substitute motion?
Yeah, I propose a substitute motion that we table this issue until we can schedule a time for further council discussion in a work session. Is that what you're looking for, Lisa, also? And an additional public hearing.
So, I'm sorry, I missed the first part of that. I
To,
apologize.
Table this
Okay.
for an additional work session and a public hearing.
So there's a motion, a substitute motion to table and a second. And before we go to discussion, I'm going to just check in with staff, because I think there's a time issue concerning this particular ordinance.
We were hoping to get it done before the end of the year, if possible. You do still have time. For that, you have, I think, 4 opportunities remaining. And we did receive quite a bit of input via letter in the past couple of days. So we have some contact information for people. So we were definitely trying to get it done before the legislative session, because the city had committed to moving this along so that information was available to them.
So it's your understanding, though, that a delay of a formal meeting or a briefing in a formal meeting shouldn't cause us any?
Not that I know of. The mayor and her staff may have a better idea.
And I'll just check in with the mayor's staff. I know you're at a disadvantage because not all the staff are here to prepared to speak to this. Do we have a staff member? Could you come speak to this?
Tracy Tran from the planning staff. I think that will be okay if we needed to have another briefing and to hold another public hearing. We have received quite a bit of calls and concerns about the proposed changes from last week, so.
Okay.
And Mr. Chair, perhaps when we do that, that would be a time when we suspend the rules and adopt that night after we've had a chance to maybe tweak this and have the public comment that we would welcome via email or phone call.
Yes, Aaron.
And if the staff's recommendations are the same as they were last time, and all that we're considering is the public feedback that we've recently been receiving, then perhaps a written briefing is sufficient.
Okay, we can look at considerations for that, but the current substitute motion on the table is to table and to do some follow-up concerning some recent comments we received. Any other discussion to that?
Do I have a second?
Yeah, you have a second, Councilmember Adams, yes. So all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries, thank you. We'll check with scheduling and look at when we can bring that back. We are on to item number C2, which is an ordinance concerning the homeless resource zoning text amendment.
Let's see if
I think there was some discussion about not taking action on this item tonight. So, is that right?
Does that mean we're not taking action on this item tonight? From the briefing. You're referring to the discussion from the briefing. Okay, yes, I'm sorry. I'm just reading through items. I'm not actually connecting to our discussion earlier today. This is an item that we decided would benefit from a little additional follow-up. So we will take this off the agenda for this evening. We don't need to formally table it, do we? And we'll move it to a future meeting for adoption. We're on to item C3, which is an ordinance concerning an alley vacation from 1600 East to 1700 East between Emerson Avenue and Roosevelt Avenue.
Mr. Chair, I move that the council adopt an ordinance vacating a city-owned alley adjacent to the properties located between 1600 East Street and 1700 East Street between Emerson and Roosevelt Avenues.
Second.
There's a motion by Councilmember Luke and a second by Councilmember Adams to adopt the ordinance. Any discussion to that motion?
I would just like to reiterate my interest in, I've been engaging with Director Reberg a bit and would like to continue that conversation. It gives me heartache every time we adopt a vacation of an alleyway. I think Aaron shares this concern with me, so I hate seeing this come through on our agenda, but I will be reluctantly supporting this tonight.
Any other discussion to the motion?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
One thing that I would encourage my fellow council members to do is when we have one of these, go out and look at these alleys. And I think sometimes when I served on the Planning Commission, there'd be times when I thought, oh, I never want to do that. And then I'd go out and see it, and I would see why it made sense. And I think sometimes in our briefings, you don't get that same sense just from a Google photo. And so I think it's worth going to see. And there are some alleys we really do want to preserve, but there are some that it makes a lot of sense.
Thank you. Any other discussion to the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. And since we've expressed our concern about closing alleys, we now are considering an ordinance to close another alley and a street at approximately 408 West Dalton Avenue.
Mr. Chair, I move that the council adopt an ordinance vacating two unnamed city-owned alleys and closing an unimproved portion of Dalton Avenue adjacent to the property located at 408 West Dalton Avenue.
Second.
There's a motion by Councilmember Luke and a second by Councilmember Johnston to adopt the ordinance. Any discussion to that motion? Can I just say ditto to the last motion? And okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. We are now on to Section D of our agenda, which is a comment section. And the opportunity now is for questions from the mayor, to the mayor from the City Council. Do we have any questions to the mayor? Thank you for joining us this evening, Mayor. Okay, we'll be moving on to comments to the city council. Before we open it to public comment, I just want to make a statement. I know a lot of you are here around a specific issue that we've been dealing with at the city. And I wanted to share from the city council that we all extend our condolences to Patrick Harmon's family and friends. We are all incredibly saddened by his death and its impact to our communities, and we're aware of how hard these situations are. We also express our support for the Salt Lake City police officers and difficult decisions they are forced to make in the efforts to keep our community safe. The review process for use of force by police officers requires, on our part, a very diligent examination of the available evidence by multiple experts within and outside the police department in light of existing legal guidelines. This process is necessary and incredibly valuable step for us to ensure that our justice system is working for all. The council's role in these situations is to make sure that clear policies guide these processes and that funding is sufficient to ensure the process is as fair as possible. Council members are indeed listening to you, the public, and we will consider any available information from the police department and the public about whether additional training, resources, or policy changes are needed. We truly appreciate your efforts to come out and speak with us this night, and I know several of you are here to provide comments to the council. George Chapman, followed by Bart Tibbetts.
I need to repeat myself again on airport tracks. You had the discussion this afternoon, and you need to realize if you're going to raise taxes $50 million without anybody else having a say, really, you should make sure that it's useful, financially effective, and responsible. And right now, airport tracks, Flying Bridge, Eye Candy is not financially realistic. It doesn't make sense. But there is something that does make sense. Rail is successful when it is going to a destination. Every successful rail system, mass transit system based on rail that goes to a destination is successful. The last destination you have in Salt Lake City right now is the International Center. That's almost 30,000 employees, and they have no mass transit essentially. But you have a chance to send the rail on North Temple. The airport board is already talking about this. You have a chance to send it to the International Center in Northwest Quadrant. Amazon is on 5600 West, and they pay. They help pay for rail in Seattle. Stadler's there. Have you talked to Stadler? Before you make a decision on airport tracks, you should talk to Stadler, see what they think. Right now, Delta, supposedly, according to the airport board, is agnostic on whether or not a flying bridge versus a ground tracks make sense. They don't care. If they don't care, send it to where it really makes sense. I'm asking you not to make a decision without a public comment period and to consider, realistically consider, talking to Stadler and Amazon and the other hotels and employers in the International Center before you make a decision.
Thank you, George.
Thanks for listening.
Bart Tibbetts, followed by Douglas Cotant.
Can you pass it to the, all right, okay.
Bart, please go ahead and start because
Okay,
you'll be
my name is
timed.
Bart Tibbetts. I'm resident of Poplar Grove. I'm not one of those radicals and what have you. I'm just a common guy, a veteran. And what really got me really disturbed about this whole situation, you look at the first photo, that's from Officer Fox cam video. It shows clearly he was shot in the back and the side. You look at the second photo, look at it. That is Officer Fox of him shooting from the side. The first photo was not included in the report at all. Hence, we have a deception. And this is why we're here in this community. We're angry about this situation. If we have these kind of deceptions, I found out that these body cam videos do not have to be released at all, whatsoever, unless it's a request by the community of a grandma request. Abdi Mohammed was shot 5 times in the back. It took a year, if I understand correctly, before that video was released. We're asking one simple thing. New York is doing the same thing. We want immediate release of these videos. The public has a right to know. Public has no, if we're going to wait a long time, what kind of deceptions are going to be put into these videos, these camcorders? That's all. We also want more community control of the police department because this kind of activity is going on. Thank you.
Thank you, Bart. Douglas Cotant, followed by Maureen McLean.
Well, I have a, okay. When I was on my vacation, I was sitting in a hotel room in New Paltz, New York. I turn on Channel 7 News, and I hear the newscaster, David Muir, saying that something had happened here in Salt Lake City. Apparently, an officer whose name I will not mention decided that he was going to force a nurse to take a blood sample from somebody. And she said it was against hospital policy. But then the detective arrested her for no reason at all. When I heard this on TV in New Paltz, New York, I was so mad that when I came back, I was going to literally chastise the police department for that. However, I've been told that the man has been fired, but he still wants to challenge it. And at my LDS ward, I was told that the man was fired, so I'm not going to make any more comments on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Douglas. Maureen McLean, followed by Francisca Abal.
Hi, council members. Thank you for hearing all these remarks. I think they're all really valuable, and we appreciate your time. My comments are that you know everything you need to know at this point about the accessory dwelling units. You've heard from folks in different areas of town and their concerns. And I would just like to add tonight one comment about not making it a blanket policy for all areas of town. We can see areas that the accessory dwelling units would be very advantageous, and we encourage that. But there are some areas where the traffic would increase, the on-street parking would increase, and we would lose the beauty of the single dwelling units that Salt Lake's known for, the single housing units that we have. I would encourage that consideration for the ADUs. Thank you.
Thank you, Maureen. Francisca Ball, followed by Charlie Erickson.
Hi, my name is Francesca Ball, and I am here tonight because I'd like to demand that we get the release of officers' body cam footage much sooner than we ever see it through constant protest, contrary to a popular narrative. those who come out to protest do have jobs. I work 9 to 5:30, and then I go home and make dinner for my son, and I'm still out here, and the reason is because it matters to me. I'm a member of this community, a member of this city, and I want the release to come sooner, because what we're seeing is that once it is released, nothing happens. An officer who shoots somebody, even one who is running away, in the back, doesn't even get any consequence from it. It amounts mostly to a paid leave for that officer. It's not right. I want to see justice, and the only way forward towards that end that I see is for the community, for there to be public pressure once the community sees the circumstances of a shooting. That requires the immediate release of body cam footage. Now, I came here today, I had no knowledge of the ordinance that was released earlier this afternoon, but when I heard about it, what it reads is that we'll release the footage within 10 days if nothing unusual is found within that footage. That doesn't hold anybody accountable to release the footage. And especially in these cases which are unusual, that's the reason we want to see the footage, to determine the nature of the shootings. I find that honestly cowardly to release something that says, hey, we're looking at this issue that there seems to be a lot of public interest around, but we're not actually going to do anything to effectively change it. It's a completely ineffectual ordinance. We want the footage to be released within 24 hours. If there's nothing to hide, it shouldn't be a problem.
Time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie Erickson, followed by Matt Romrell.
So I just wanted to kind of turn this into a little bit of a personal issue, because I think it really is, it boils down to individual people who are being shot by police. And, you know, not everyone is really given, in the general narrative, not everyone is given the benefit of doubt. Not everyone is given the possibility of being a human who's shot by police. And so I want to ask you to imagine, like, if it was someone in your family who was shot by police, wouldn't you want answers? Wouldn't you want to know what happened? Wouldn't you just want to have the knowledge, the public knowledge, be aware of what actually happened and not just whoever gets the first access to whatever other photos or anything that's put out that could not even be correct. I think it's important because it frames the narrative, and we need real knowledge of what actually happened. And so, yeah, I would really encourage you all to think of what could happen if it was someone who was close to you, because Patrick Harmon was a person. And he has rights. And so, yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Matt Romrell, followed by Stephen Michael Christian. Is Matt not here? Stephen Michael Christian, followed by Aaron Ogalui.
My name is Stephen Michael Christian with Utah Against Police Brutality, speaking in favor of a city ordinance to release all related footage of police-involved violent incidences within 24 hours. My message is simple. Mayor Biskupski valued the police over the lives they killed and terrorized. This preferencing comes at the expense of victims of police violence, notably and recently Patrick Harmon. What the community saw was a cop shooting Patrick in the back. How Jackie spun it was that this is, quote, unwarranted suspicion on our part. We don't suspect that a cop shot and murdered a black man in the back. We saw a cop shoot and murder a black man in the back. Biskupski's care about police transparency is doubtful. If she did, she would have been the one who released the footage of Patrick's murder after months of grammar requests by UAPB and by various media outlets and by other activists in the community. Her recent executive order does not create accountability. It codifies secrecy. It does not take 10 days to release a video. Such a delay only exists to make a community's outrage peter out. I hope that the City Council will agree that Jackie's half-assed policy is unacceptable. Thank you, and Black Lives Matter.
Thank you, Stephen. Aaron Ogalui, and Aaron, if I'm assuming I'm mispronouncing that, so please correct me. Followed by William Galloway.
I'm Aaron Ogilvy. I'm here to talk about the police body camera footage that was not released for a year with Abdi Mohammed, as we've talked about. New York City has ordinances that they release their body cam footage within 24 hours. I feel like that if New York City can do it, then I feel like we could do it. I feel like the 10 days to try to get a grammar request is the grammar request, and then it can be denied again. And we're at these protests, and we protest, and we work so hard to try to just get someone's attention every time somebody gets shot, and we can't even get camera footage. And we can't even in the news with Patrick Harmon. Patrick Harmon was ridiculous. In the news, it was like, maybe he was on a bike, maybe he was walking, maybe he had a weapon, maybe he was mad at an officer. It was like there was nothing, and no one had any information, and it just totally seemed like a cover-up from the city's perspective and from the news perspective. It was intense, and it didn't make anyone in the community feel safe. And then nobody knew who he even was until we had a protest, and they were like, whoa, who's Patrick Harmon? And he was shot. He was murdered. And no one knew his name. Like, it just doesn't make any sense to not have the access to this body cam footage that we pay for those body cameras. And it's our footage, and it's in our community, and we don't get to see it because someone's able to just look at it? Okay, I'll just be done.
Thank you. And as a reminder, Aaron, we welcome your comments in other forms as well. So if you don't have sufficient time, please share with us. I'd like to, as William's coming up, just remind audience members of two things. Please do not hold your signs up to block views of people behind you. And also, I suggested no applause in favor of or support of the speaker, but that implies also snapping. So please, we're trying to be very aware that we want this to be a comfortable place regardless of people's views. William, followed by Isaiah. And Isaiah, I'm sorry, I can't quite figure out your last name.
So one of the things that people don't realize about the footage is that the individual and the officers, a lot of the officers are too timid. We have a police policy in which is broken window policing, which is establishing an authoritarian approach. Officers are too quick and too fast to draw for their gun. They're too quick and too fast to shoot with their gun. The training that needs to be provided for them is that violence is a last measure, not a first approach, even with an assailant with a weapon. And the reason is because if you use violent force, you cannot capture the assailant. Your job is to risk your life to obtain the assailant, not to come home as a first priority. That is a secondary priority as an officer. Because you're signing and agreeing to a reasonable amount of danger when you take that profession. We pay you a significant wage. And if we're not, then we should increase those wages, but we should train them in order to deal with every situation, regardless of whether or not the assailant has a weapon, but use force as the last resort. There was an individual who was stopped by the police because he got called out, who was shot by his own gun. The officer lunged at the individual. He had not made any motions for his gun. He simply untucked his shirt. And then when the officer said, please don't reach for your gun, He then said, huh? And then the other officer lunged at him, which started the predication in which he was running away, because most people would flee that instance in which somebody's charging at you when you're not expecting it. If the mayor, since the mayor will not do anything when the officers continuously have killed individuals, I will run against the mayor. Because that is ridiculous that the officers aren't being trained sufficiently to not use force, and that we are bringing about authoritarian actions.
Time.
Thank you, William. Isaiah Bleeh, B-E-L-E-H. I'm sorry, I don't think I'm getting that name right. I apologize. Michelle Goldberg, followed by Rachel Edwards.
I'm going to speak very quickly because I only have 2 minutes. My name is Michelle Goldberg. I own the business, building, and 2 parcels of land at 245 West Paramount Avenue. This is not just an investment of my life's work, savings, and the money that I borrowed against it. It is my heart and soul, and it's called Diggity Dog Resort. As you probably already know, I'm the one that found out about the shelter and its entrance from a reporter asking me for a quote about this, given that it will be built directly across from my business. Without prior knowledge of this activity, and much to my dismay, this 275 West High Street address, as it has been referred to for nearly a year, seemingly decided last month to change its front entrance and therefore its address to Paramount Avenue. There was no notice, therefore no opportunity to publicly comment before any decision was made. I had no involvement whatsoever in this process that dramatically affects my business. The entrance to the property should be, at the very least, kept on High Street as proposed, where there are no businesses. If the architects feel the need to have a south-facing building entrance, then the residents can enter the property on High Street and walk to a south-facing building entrance. My councilwoman actually informed me that in her discussions with the architect last week, that the architect said that this would absolutely not, she wouldn't be willing to accommodate this suggestion. And the last time I checked, the architect wasn't an elected official, so for her to make statements like this is just appalling to me at this point. But I feel like if the city had done a little bit of homework earlier, could have significantly reduced the negative impact on the businesses on Paramount Avenue. There has to be some mitigation for our property values and impact on business. My customers and my staff, 1,500 of them, are extremely concerned, and my competitors, of course, are thrilled. And I've already spent countless hours attempting to listen to the legitimate concerns of my customers and their animals, for many whom are their children.
Time.
Thank you.
Everybody's getting well paid in this, the architect, the builder.
Thank you for your comments. Rachel Edwards. I'm going to try this again, followed by maybe Joshua, B-I-E-H or B-L-E-H from Murray. Okay, go ahead.
Well, Salt Lake City is my home and my community, and I want to be proud of my community, but I am totally ashamed of how this has all played out here. Weeks to get the video cam footage released, and I don't know, shot in the back just is wrong. So I don't know, I would like to ask, first of all, demand, first of all, that we can do the same as New York City and get that footage out in 24 hours. And there needs to be more community control over this and community input. Just more transparency and I don't know, I just can't believe 3 officers shoot 1 man in the back and they're in fear of their life. That doesn't make any sense at all. So anyway, I would like to ask for more, make this city something I can be proud of. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Amber Jacobson, followed by Terry Mitchell. Is Amber here? Thank you, Amber.
Thanks. I'm here today to say that the police body camera footage is ours. It belongs to the people of this city. For too long, Black lives and the lives of people of color have been allowed to matter less here, no more. We deserve, demand the right to see with our own eyes how the police are keeping the peace here. This 10 business day policy that was released today is a start, but it is not sufficient. The 10-day policy allows 10 days of police getting their story straight before we have a chance to view our footage. It allows 10 business days to identify and to cover up harmful information. 10 business days for the police in the city to control the narrative. That is 10 business days too long. I do not buy that the DA or the police need 10 days. When they deem the footage exculpatory towards their interests, they can't wait to release it. Let's see what the delay on releasing the footage in the murder of Patrick Harmon allowed. It allowed Sim Gill and the DA's office time to get creative in their reporting. It deemed Mr. Harmon's murder justified. It allowed them time to mysteriously find that Mr. Harmon threatened the police. Mr. Harmon made no such threats in any of the video whatsoever. It allowed the police to somehow lose Officer Fox's extremely audio threat of "I will effing shoot you." That disappeared from the report. It allowed them time to decide that the body camera footage that actually showed Mr. Harmon's murder didn't need to be used. And parsing the other officers' footage, they picked a camera that didn't even show the murder and allowed them to say that Mr. Harmon came to a full stop and turned with a knife in his hand. That's not supported by any of the footage. But the footage that most clearly shows that that didn't happen was Officer Fox's footage, and it didn't even make the report. We don't believe the official narrative anymore. Footage is ours.
Thank you. Terry Mitchell, followed by David Newland.
Hello, thank you for having me. My name is Terry Mitchell. I witnessed 2 black men being murdered in the park at Liberty Park when I was 15, and so this is really challenging for me to have to come up here and talk to you, but I feel that it's very important. I'm concerned for the lives of the people of color in our state. I have many friends of color who can't go to tracks or drive down the street without being routinely harassed, asked where they're going, and if they have papers. Police training is such that shoot first and ask questions later seems to be policy, and the keep your job excuse of "I was afraid for my life" is all you need to avoid accountability. But the threats from the officer and the fact that they handcuff a man bleeding to death from being shot in the back without taking measures to save his life reflect that that is a questionable thing to consider. If the police have done nothing wrong, they shouldn't have a problem showing the body cam in one day. That's why we need body cams. I know from experience, having trying to get a grandma request answered for over a year with the Attorney General's office, how they play keep away from the victims of the people who are supposed to protect them. I am asking you to at least respect the people that you serve and give the body cam footage within one day. If there is nothing to hide, there shouldn't be a problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. David Newland, followed by David Guyman.
Thanks so much. When Officer Fox picked up his gun and pointed it at Patrick Harmon, he had full assurance that Sim Gill was going to let him off the hook. He knew that Sim Gill was going to let him off the hook because he lets everybody off the hook. He knew that his police union was going to back him up. He knew that the mayor's office was going to back him up. You know what Patrick Harmon didn't have? Even a basic sense of safety. Why was he weeping for his life? Why was he weeping for what was about to come? It's because he knew that these officers could kill him. It's very simple. We say police, but what we should really be thinking is government employees. Can you think of any other government employee that can shoot somebody on the job and we don't know their name the next day, and we don't know the details of the incident the next day? It's infuriating that we make exceptions for the people who have been given the authority to kill, but that we would never make for any other government official. It's utterly ridiculous. This footage belongs to the people. It's already classified as public under GRAMA. All we have to do is say that we are not going to take the step of, in virtually every circumstance, reclassifying it as protected just so the cops can get their stories straight. just so that government officials like Sim Gill and the mayor can get their story straight and back up these officers. It's unconscionable, it's ridiculous. 24 hours, that is perfectly reasonable. Other cities are doing it. And frankly, even if other cities weren't doing it, let's be the first to say that public footage belongs to the public. That's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. David Guyman, followed by Josh Jensen.
One subject I would like to bring up that, on top of all this, I agree that the footage should be released within 24 hours, but also my big issue is why is it, the question, I'll ask a question, then I'll put a statement to it. Why is it that, that this officer or any officer can get away with shooting somebody in the back, whereas a normal, everyday citizen who does the same thing under Utah's self-defense laws is subject to murder charges? Officers like this should be put in prison just like anybody else who wrongfully shoots somebody that is not just cause. Under Utah's laws of self-defense, this would not constitute for any other person, any civilian, anybody that is defending their home or anything like that. This would not constitute what would be considered a rightful shoot. But if you're a civilian, you go to prison. If you're not going, if you're a cop, you get paid leave and nothing happens. And this needs to change. And that's the biggest question that I ask. Why is that? This shouldn't be the case. Cops need to be held to the same standard as we, the citizens, are. And so that's what I got.
Thank you, David. Josh Jensen, followed by Stephanie Doctor.
Hi, I'd like to start off by saying, Jackie, I used to look up to you. I moved to Utah 3 years ago, and I thought, hey, there's a gay mayor here. She'll stick up for people like me and minorities. But instance after instance, you've been mishandling things and doing things wrong, and I'm ashamed to have you as my mayor. I want to know why you need 10 business days to release that footage. What's going on in those 10 business days? Are you editing the footage? Are you making cop stories match up so it fits your narrative? There's no reason why you need 10 business days to release the footage. At most, 48 hours. But we are asking for a one-day release. Thank you, members of the council. I'd like to yield the rest of my time.
Thank you, Josh. Stephanie Doctor, followed by Jack Panay.
It's actually Dr. Stephanie Doctor. My name is Stephanie Doctor, and I'm a professor at the University of Utah. I teach jazz history courses, and I help students discover the relationship between culture and systems of inequality. In my 2-month tenure at the U, a white nationalist organization called Blood and Soil adorned our campus with posters proclaiming the dangers of black men. Ben Shapiro, who believes that microaggressions were invented by the politically correct to police the actions of white, straight, middle-class men, gave a talk. And just recently, racial slurs were spray-painted on a building in the heart of our campus. Having just moved from Charlottesville, Virginia, where neo-Nazis recently beat students with lit torches, I hoped for less egregious expressions of white supremacy at the U, but the university is hostile to black people, and unfortunately, it only mirrors the anti-black city in which it resides. I commend Mayor Biskupski and DA Sim Gill for that was a Freudian slip, for releasing an updated body cam footage policy on the heels of our protest. It is a start, but it is a wolf in sheep's clothing. As a citizen with the highest educational degree in this nation, and as a very proud member of Utah Against Police Brutality, citizens activist group, and now FBI-dubbed identity extremist organization Black Lives Matter, I demand that you release body cam footage of any OICI within 24 hours of the event. In addition, I demand that you explain the new policy in greater detail for the sake of transparency, and that was your key term in today's press conference. What counts as unusual or unforeseen circumstances? Why can't you complete investigative interviews with key witnesses within 10 business days? What exactly are you doing with the footage during those 2 weeks? How long does a grandma request take to process? If you submitted this document to me in my class, I would return it to you and say this language is vague, revise, resubmit. I get paid to discern the meaning of language for a living, and this executive order, though it has the phrase 10 business days in it, does not show me that the same outrageous delay in releasing the footage of the murder of Patrick Harmon won't happen again. And I'll close with my final demand. Someone must tell us why it took almost 2 months to release the footage of the brutal murder of Patrick Harmon. For the sake of transparency, I want to see a log of
Time.
every action that was taken with that footage, every set of eyeballs that was on it, and every conversation that was had about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Jack Panay, followed by Carol Anderson.
Hi there, Jack Panette.
I'm sorry I made you French Canadian. I apologize.
It's all good. I'm also here to ask the council to put in place an ordinance requiring that body cam footage be released 24 hours after any officer-involved incident with full audio, unedited, so that the people here and the people of the community can review it in full for themselves. You're seeing a lot of comments today that reflect a lack of community trust in what the police are doing, and there are good reasons for that. We've been through enough incidents where we see things that look to us to be wrong, and then we see a lack of accountability and what looks like a lack of accountability to us and what looks like prevarication and stonewalling. That lack of trust is earned on our part, and we feel like we need to take more issue with what's going on and see the footage ourselves. Council members, I had the very strange fortune earlier this year to be in London during a terror attack. London has had 5 terror attacks this year. The UK has about 65 million people compared to Utah's 3 million or so. We routinely, as a state, at the state level, have about 3 times more police killings than all of the UK every year. It is not 60 times scarier to be a police officer here than it is in the UK. We don't have 60 times more crime than the UK does. This is a solvable problem. It's a big problem. Solving it will be hard. The City Council of Salt Lake City can't solve it all by itself, but putting together a more coherent and transparent policy for a quick release of body cam footage is an excellent start. Thank you.
Thank you. Carol Anderson, followed by Soren Simonson.
My name is Carol Anderson. I live at 1899 Wasatch Drive, and I appreciate the opportunity of the civility and the decorum that you offer us. Certainly, we're in a safe environment where we are sincerely listened to, and I appreciate that this is what you extend to all of us. I am concerned about the safety and the security of rentals. Rentals on a massive movement, which would be the ADUs, will be hard to police and be hard to guarantee safety and security because they're small units and they're scattered throughout the community, and they're harder to police and to understand and to find out what happens when things go wrong. And there's an example here tonight of what they call police brutality, the oppression of a certain group, and the issues around that. It is serious when a group feels oppressed and they feel like there's no justice. But when you look at data, videos, cams, you cannot look at a picture or data and immediately perceive what really has happened. That does not speak. A number, a shooting in the back does not speak to the entire issue. It is so short-sighted to believe that a video or a data in some way can be interpreted for the fullness and the meaning and the truth that's in that. Example, let's say it's made up, I don't know if it's made up or not, but there was a class of children. One of the children came with urine stench on them all the time, poorly dressed, sat at the back of the class. It was Christmas time. They were to give out gifts. No one wanted to give a gift to Olivia. She stunk. She's at the back of the room. She was not accepted in that classroom. The child that got that name knew that nobody would know who gave that gift, so there's no tie to him. And he sent a terrible message to her about her appearance and her smell. And that,
Time.
Oh, dear. Well, the bottom line was, she slept with 2 of her sisters that were very young, and she couldn't bathe because the sisters...
Carol, I need to cut you off. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you for your comments. If you'd like to share your comments in another format, please feel free to do so. Soren Simonson, followed by Patrick Harmon.
Thank you. Since I'm here, I thought I'd stick around. First of all, a couple of thank yous to the council and the mayor. I had occasion to be at the ribbon cutting this morning for Party's Trail. I know Councilmember Adams and Mayor Biskupski were there. I thank all of those on the council, this council, previous councils, the mayor and past mayors for the efforts to make a wonderful connection in our city. It will be well used. It already is well used in the parts that are complete, and this is a great addition. I don't know if all of you know the history of that project, but it started with a group of elementary school students in Hidden Hollow, taking a forgotten piece of Sugar House and turning it into a gem that then expanded into a trail that's now part of a regional system. I spent the afternoon with some elementary school students at Backman Elementary School who were visioning a park along the Jordan River. I want to thank you for the funding that recently was given through CIP, I understand, to the bridge, to connect to Backman Elementary, and hopefully some funding will go to the park along the side of the river. The students were fascinated with this opportunity. A young black boy held my hand as we walked down the river, and after a couple minutes, he pulled me down and said, "Mr. Teacher, I'm scared." And I said, "Why are you scared?" And he says, "Because I've never done anything like designing a park or making a park." And I said, "Well, we're going to do something wonderful." And I know it can be done because I've seen it with Party's Trail. I've seen it with the Imperial Neighborhood Park. It will take more funding than what's been committed to make that the gem that it can be, but I hope that commitment is there long term. Two other quick comments. I was not able to make the past hearings on the Transit Master Plan and the ADU ordinance. I love the plan for transit. I hope we can get that done very quickly with one addition, and that is extend the streetcar to Sugar House Park. That was the original vision. It was the vision that brought South Salt Lake to the project to begin with. I know there's a lot of concern about expansion and extension that hasn't been fully resolved yet. Extend it to the park. It's the single largest generator of traffic in Sugar House. Some days it brings tens of thousands of people, make that connection. On ADUs, please adopt that very quickly and make it citywide.
Soren, thank you for your comments. I apologize for having to cut you off, but we're being consistent with everybody.
Thank you.
I'm finding
Appreciate
that
it.
former council members are sometimes the worst offenders. So just put that note in the record so
We know
that I check
sometimes you can be a
myself
little
during
generous, but
future
thank you.
comments. So thank you, Soren. Angela Moore, followed by Calvin Fors.
I'm here to discuss the implementation of a real policy change requiring the release of our police body cam and dash cam footage within 24 hours. You say you want the justice system to work for all of us. The justice system clearly isn't working. I want to feel safe in my community. I don't. I want to be able to call the police if I'm in a threatening situation, but I can't, and you know why I can't. I can't because calling the cops is potentially signing a death sentence. I can't put my loved ones in danger, my community in danger. I don't want to be more afraid of police violence than I am of other brutality. I demand police accountability, demand community control. I demand 24-hour release of our footage. We have to do better than we've done. Immediate release of the footage is the first step.
Thank you. Calvin Fors, followed by Brooks Bergman.
Good evening, Council. Calvin Force, member of the Southwest Regional Council of Carpenters. According to some of the things here, you've got some challenges involving the housing, especially low-income housing, and you're trying to meet those challenges by rezoning several areas of the city, and I applaud you for doing that. This definitely needs to happen. You're gonna meet those challenges by creating more living, and you're also gonna create jobs, and that's of course what I'm here about. My request is one of repetition regarding the contractors used on these jobs. Responsible contractors, as you know in the past, I've spoke to this, they pay payroll taxes. They provide that tax revenue back to the city. Their workers are protected by workman's comp and unemployment insurance, and they also provide good wages that family can go and put those back into the community. Alternately, those contractors that do not pay area standards and are irresponsible in their dealings, pay their people, and they take advantage of the programs providing for assistance for people that really need it. What you have is a guy on a job. These jobs sometimes involve public money. They're not paying payroll tax. They're not paying income tax. They're using the resources meant for those that are truly in need. He's not protected by workman's comp, which can create issues with insurance when he goes to the hospital because he's not going to pay for it. So then that's get passed on to the real patrons of the hospital and the insurance companies. And he could potentially qualify for those low-income housings when in fact he's making roughly $50,000 a year because none of that is on the books. So basically, let's try to take some steps. I know I've talked about this in the past, and I appreciate the outreach that I've had with some of the members. I would also specifically ask Mr. Kitchen. I would like to speak with you personally about some of this, being involved with the RDA and Ms. Adams, because I believe this is a real challenge and a real problem in this community. I've seen it myself personally, that these people are this is money that's being lost. So I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
yeah.
point of personal privilege. Will you make sure our staff has contact information for us, and then we can see if we can arrange that? Thank you.
I believe we have that on our contact card, so thank you. Brooks Bergman, followed by Jade Arter.
I feel like speaking to officials on elevated platforms may lead people to forget that the City Hall's fundamental purpose is to represent the people. Much like how killer cops hiding behind Gill and Biskupski can lead law enforcement to forget that they are supposed to represent the people. In fact, most of the city's actions after executions of community members by police reinforce this distance between city governance and the community they purportedly serve, namely withholding body cam footage of police brutality when it is defined as public property to the people and within law. Another example is releasing policy that's purportedly meant to increase the transparency of law enforcement when in reality it functionally allows officials to protect brutal police by defining unexpected and unforeseen circumstances. The public demands that body cam footage be released within 1 day of acts of police brutality. No more dead bodies. If you want your constituencies to actually believe you when you extend your condolences, stop spitting on Patrick Harmon's grave. Stop spitting on graves. Your policy, Biskupski, was an insult to his life and the communities of color that you are purported to serve. That is a failure on your part as both an individual member of the community and a represented public official. As it stands now, looking at all of you on this elevated platform, I doubt that many of us in this room believe that as long as you remain complacent in reinforcing systems of white supremacy and allowing cops like Fox to continue their job and be paid after slaughtering black people and other people of color, that you deserve to be here on these platforms. I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you for your comments. Jade Arter, followed by James Berenson.
I am here along with many of the others tonight to ask you as city council members to remember your responsibilities as elected officials to the citizens of this city. I am asking you to ask yourselves who would be protected by a policy that withholds the footage from the citizens of our city when there are police critical incidents. Body cam footage may not change the actions of the officers, but it certainly increases the transparency, and it is the right of the community to judge their actions and then to hold those officers accountable for the ways that they are protecting and serving the community and whether they are doing an adequate job or not. The statement of the council before this comment section suggests that the council members are concerned about the safety of the residents of Salt Lake City. And if that is true, I and all of those with me tonight are here to ask you to choose a policy that is best for our community members. Those with me and then those who are no longer here. Dylan Taylor was a member of our community until he was killed by police. James Dudley Barker was a member of our community, and so is Patrick Harmon. He was not, he had a name, he had a family, and he deserves to find justice, and his family deserve to have answers, and they deserve to have an understanding
of the events that took someone that they loved and cherished away from them forever. And every act of police brutality in this state creates an increased level of distrust between law enforcement and the people who live in Salt Lake City. The only way to bridge those gaps is to increase the transparency and to increase the control of the community in the policing of our communities, to have a say in what is appropriate and what is not, and to do what is
Time.
best for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. James Berenson, followed by Jordan Stampf.
Greetings, comrades. Thank you for allowing me to address the Politburo. And I'd like to especially thank you, Chairman, for gracing us with your presence. So often you're out of here avoiding your job. I would like to ask when the counselors are going to start doing the bidding of their constituents instead of the bidding of the establishment like Mr. Luke does for Goldman Sachs. Another thing, I'm going to probably get a lot of trouble for saying this, but I remember Mr. Sim Gill, he did prosecute a West Valley narco officer when he shot that young lady in the car. I do know Sim Gill. I spoke with him, and he seems to be fair, and I do remember him prosecuting that West Valley office, that narcotics officer, when he shot that young lady in the car. I would say that, we're all one race. There is no such thing as racism in my eyes because we're all Homo sapiens, the human race. If it had to be defined and characterized, I would say it would be eugenics, but that's, I guess, a topic for another day. And the ideas that racism and things like that are going around, that's just to divide and conquer we the people so that you guys can spread your tyranny, especially you, throughout our communities and rule with a strong arm. I know there are bad cops. I saw that guy up at the U. He shouldn't have done that. But I've had several run-ins with the cops, and people behind me weren't growing up in the 80s on the wrong side of the tracks because you run out your mouth to the cops, they take you under a bridge and beat the shit out of you and leave you there. They don't do that no more. I don't think they understand how good it is. And in that video, I saw a silver thing come out from that gentleman's hand. I don't know what it is, but I saw a silver reflect off the light, and, it should be common sense. If you pull a weapon on an officer, he has a right to defend his life. That's all I've got to say on that matter, but, I guess that's it. You tyrants continue tyranning, and have a good night.
Thank you. Jordan, and I apologize, Jordan Stamp for Stumpf. Jordan, thank you. Followed by William Van Wagenen.
Awesome. Thank you for your time. I just wanted to first start off saying that I'm a white woman. I will likely never experience police brutality. However, I find two things boggling. One, we sit here for 2 hours talking about closing an alleyway and other zoning things, all in the name of transparency, and yet we can't get that same kind of transparency for body cam footage. Second thing that boggles my mind is I work in a call center. In that call center, my every action, what I'm typing, what I'm looking at, what I'm saying, is monitored, and I am immediately reprimanded if I don't say, "Have a good day." It's crazy to me that a police officer can shoot someone in the back while he's running away, and there's no accountability. If we want to set the gold standard for the police department, we need to be releasing the footage 24 hours after it happens. And here's why. If you want to talk about fixing the homeless problem, we need to build trust in our communities. Patrick Harmon was terrified for his life. He was running away because he was scared. If you want to stop that, if you want to build trust in communities, if you want to fix the problem of homeless people, we need to establish trust between the citizens and the people they are sworn to protect, the police. That's really all I have to say. I can't believe that we're having this argument when we just sat here and talked for 2 hours about closing alleyways, but we can't get transparency when it comes to murder, acts of violence against our citizens, against our communities of color, against our homeless people. That's all I have to say.
Thank you for your comments. William Van Wagenen, followed by Bernie Hart.
Hello, thanks for taking the time to hear what we have to say. It's unacceptable that the police continue to shoot and kill Utah residents without justification. Blacks, Hispanics, Native Americans, whites, they've all been victims of police violence in recent years here in Utah. And as many have noted, Patrick Harmon was shot in the back. That's barbaric. Patrick Harmon is just the latest victim of the police, and unless police are held accountable for doing things like they did to Patrick Harmon and the other people who were shot, whose names have been mentioned as well in recent years, this is just going to continue. So as the city council, you all have an amazing opportunity to make change, to pass an ordinance that will demand the release of the body cam footage in any officer-involved shooting like this in the future. That's the first step towards making police officers accountable who are shooting and killing Utah residents without justification. And you really do have the chance to try to save lives by passing this ordinance and taking other actions towards making the police more accountable in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Bernie Hart, followed by Oscar Ross.
I experience so many emotions when I come here on nights like this with my interest in the homelessness in the community and my participation in CAG for the past year over the shootings and the actions of the police department. I take all this very seriously, and I participate and I listen and I try and do the best I can. But when I saw that video of Patrick, Mr. Harmon, in his face and the fear on his face prior to him being shot, I saw the face of every homeless person I deal with in Salt Lake City. Mr. Harmon was an addict. He was staying at the road home. He was experiencing a lot of the things that people in our program experience. And shortly after that happened, 4 of our leaders or people in our program were sitting on the sidewalk outside of Pioneer Park, and 6 highway patrol people came up with them to them, and they were sitting on the curb. They thought they were smoking, and the 4 of them ended up in jail. One was a Marine veteran. One was a man that was organizing our community service program and helping other homeless people. Another man had 30 warrants that we were trying to help get into Judge Baxter's court to get the warrants cleaned up. We haven't seen him yet. And the man that was running the program was released after a week after his original warrant charges were reduced to almost nothing. And the 4th person was dealing with the veteran, and another was dealing with a schizophrenic. That's how we treat the homeless in Salt Lake. And Mr. Harmon was right to be afraid of the individuals and what he was experiencing, because the homeless's interaction with the police, especially currently, is not good. So what you saw is going to happen again, and it's going to happen again, and it's going to happen again, unless you take some common sense approaches to solving this problem that don't include harassing and bullying the homeless, the addicts, and the people that are on the street. So I'm asking you it's not just about videos, and it's not just about cameras.
Thank you,
it's
Bernie.
about a bigger problem.
Thank you for your comments, Bernie. Thanks. Oscar Ross, followed by Jacob Jensen.
I'm back. I was up here in 2009 telling you about what the police did to me, and you didn't take it serious then. I don't think you did. But in this behalf of compatriot Patrick Harmon, he was shot in the back. This has been a sober evening, and I think everybody has taken under consideration that it is a shooting in the back, and that we need to be able to see that more clearly with a 24-hour release of a videotape of this nature. This is a very crucial situation here. I've been dealing with this for 9 years. In January the 11th, and I don't think that we have enough insight into try to rectify this situation of police brutality. Just today or yesterday, I heard police chief, I can't remember the name right off the bat, but he said that every citizen is extended courtesy, dignity, and consideration. But Mr. Harmon did not get that. He was turning as he was shot in the back. I think that we need to really comprehend this evening and give it our effort to try to rectify this matter, as I said, because who's next? I mean, I'm a black man, and I've been abused for over 34 years now. There was a program yesterday that told you about 2 officers that were arrested over 34 years ago for killing a 23-year-old man in Georgia. My point is police brutality must stop. We must get a grasp and get a hold of it, and especially against us black Americans. We need to take that into consideration and
Oscar.
get
Thank you,
that
Oscar.
video released in a 24-hour period.
Thank you,
Thank
Oscar.
you.
Thank you.
Black lives matter. Black lives
Jake,
matter.
Jacob,
Black lives matter.
thank you, Oscar. Jacob Jensen.
Thanks for having me again, and I appreciate all the patience, including of the mayor. During the press release that Mayor Biskupski did earlier today, she indicated that the concerns about police violence were unwarranted. Unwarranted. Now, I don't speak for anybody here but myself, but it seemed to me like there was 2 scandals involving police footage over the last 2 months. And because of that, we know who Patrick Harmon is, and now there's a federal investigation. The person who assaulted Nurse Wubbles is also going to be fired. Well, hopefully they're going to be fired. I mean, pardon? Well, right, but they're going to appeal the decision. Thank you. The point is that I don't think that the policy that she presented is anything but a shell game for handing off responsibility. And I think that any attempt by transparency with taking away the accountability that we can get by getting that police footage in 24 hours, well, I just think that it's something that we need, and we need the city council to intervene. We need them to make an ordinance to have that footage released within 24 hours with obvious, concerns for, deleting minors' images and things like that. I know I'm kind of rambling, so I'll just put it off. We want you to make the ordinance. We don't think that they've earned the trust. The last 2 months have proved it, and we want justice for Patrick Harmon. We want justice for, for James Barker. We want justice for Dylan Taylor. All those people, 2 of them got shot in the back. The other one was a matter of training, but you know what? We needed the police footage earlier for both of those, and we needed justice for those people, and we're going to win it. But we need your help.
Thank you, Jacob. I need to acknowledge that I have multiple cards here for people who are represented by empty seats here in the front row, and I want to acknowledge that we are aware of that and acknowledge their absence in this meeting. Are there others here who would like to speak directly to the council with comments?
Mr. Penfold, those people can't speak because they were killed by police officers here at Salt Lake City.
Thanks, Jacob. We are aware of that. Thank you, Jacob. Other comments? Do you have a comment to the council? I don't have, I'm missing cards, so can we provide a microphone? Do we have a microphone? I have names for Patrick Harmon, Corey Candish, Eric Chief, Nicholas Sanchez, James Barker, Dylan Taylor, Danielle Willard, and Darren Hunt. Thank you. I don't know how to appropriately express our sincere appreciation of you all taking time to come and comment to us today. I know I speak on behalf of my fellow council members, but it is important that you are here, and we recognize how critical it is that you take the time to speak to us. You may contact us additionally individually or through the council office. Thank you for taking time out of your schedules to be here. We'll be moving on our agenda now to new business. We have one item under new business, which is approval of the advice and consent appointment for the Director of Airports, Bill Wyatt.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
I'm
And
sorry,
with-
it's not actually the consent agenda.
okay,
This
sorry.
is an item under
Just
new
him
business for
specifically?
advice and consent.
That's what we had. I move that we approve the nominee for airport director.
I have a motion by Councilmember Adams and a second by Councilmember Kitchen to approve the appointment of Director of Airports, Bill Wyatt. Any discussion to that motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Welcome. We have no unfinished business, which is item F. We have our consent agenda. I'd look for a motion to approve with the exceptions of items G5 and G6, both of which will be rescheduled.
So moved.
Second. A motion by Councilmember Johnson and a second by Councilmember Kitchen to approve the consent agenda with the exceptions of G5 and G6. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. We stand adjourned. Thank you very much.